Lewis. I'm the Group CEO of Eastern Credit Union. I'd like to welcome members and all registrants to Eastern Credit Union's webinar entitled Coping with the Global Pandemic, the Mental Health Impact. On our distinguished panel, please extend a warm welcome to Dr. Keith Likwai, who will be joining us shortly, Dr. Karen Moore, who is here present, Ms. Anna Maria Mora, who again will be joining us, and Mr. Keston Walkins, who is here present. Welcome, panel. Dr. Keith Likwai has trained as an organizational and social psychologist, and he's a certified group relations consultant who explores the unconscious dynamics and processes which may hinder individual, group, and organizational wellness. Dr. Karen Moore is a clinical child psychologist who works with children, adolescents, and their families. She has been practicing since 1995. Dr. Moore's areas of specialty include parenting, training, trauma, and working with child abuse, especially child sexual abuse. Mr. Keston Walkins is a neuro-innovator based in Trinidad and Tobago with a background in neurophysiology, cancer, and experimental neuroscience. He studied medical neuroscience out of the University of Sussex in Brighton, England, and is a PhD candidate in molecular genetics at the University of the West Indies. And hopefully joining us shortly will be Ms. Anna Maria Mora, who is a counseling psychologist who received an MED and MA from Columbia University, New York. 3 specialties guide her practice: education, psychological counseling, and human resource development. The panel's topic is coping with the global pandemic, the mental health impact. Our distinguished panel will focus on this topic and any psychosocial, organizational coping, or member of staff stress-related concerns. As a group, the panel will avoid any personal therapy online, also called teletherapy. This is for reasons of maintaining personal and professional boundaries and counseling ethics in a public space. I can advise members of the audience present that we have several handouts listed which you can download during the webinar. So you will see the handouts noticed on your screens. You can simply download those handouts and you could get resources provided by the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, NGOs. You'll also learn a bit more about our panelists and some advice in terms of the psychological impact of the COVID-19. So some very useful guides are there for you. As our audience, you are invited to ask questions at any time during this webinar by clicking on the question mark on the right, then type in your question. We may not be able to answer every question, but we will try to do so as best as we can during the next hour. You also will be asked some short polls, which will be shown on your screens. A post-webinar survey will also be sent to you, which you kindly ask to complete. Your feedback is very important to us. You're also able, finally, to raise your hand electronically to pose a question directly to the panel. But again, this depends on the time available to us. We will start by discussing relevant questions under the broad categories of community, work, and family. So starting with community, and Dr. Moore, lead off question to you. What advice would you give to persons to help relieve the anxiety arising from COVID-19?
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Lewis, for putting this together. That one is a very big question because there are many kinds of anxiety. Some are more based in reality than others, but I think that they can generally be approached in similar ways. And I think a very big source of anxiety right now is all the information that people are getting from the media. There are daily press briefings. There are regular updates in the international press. During this pandemic, there's rumors that are going around. There's personal information where you might know somebody who knows somebody who could have been exposed or who is infected. So there's a lot of information coming. It's very important to regulate that and control that. When you're in a situation that you can't control, sometimes you try to manage yourself by getting as much information as possible. That can easily get to information overload, and it's no longer useful. Pick one reliable source of information and stay with it. Usually the gossip, the unfounded information, that creates more anxiety because it's always more extreme and dramatic. Stick with the Centers for Disease Control in the US or the World Health Organization. Stick with that kind of information and reliable local information from the Ministry of Health. So that's one big area. The other one is understand that you cannot do this alone. None of us can get through this on our own. Find support. You cannot be physically close to people unless they're of your household right now. Even if you're still an essential worker and going out to work, the closeness that you can have is limited because of the restrictions on physical distancing and so on. But find support. Find support through your friends. Find support through your family. Do not try to do this alone. Even if it's somebody you reach out to once a day for 5 minutes, reach out to somebody and get support from them. It could be your parish priest or the pastor of your church. Find somebody and get support. Don't try to do it alone.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Very useful tips you shared with us today. Keston, would you have any other thing to add to that?
Yeah, first of all, good morning, everyone, and thanks so much for your time and attention. Yes, I do have a couple of things that I want to say, but I think concerning anxiety, it's a natural thing in the sense that it's a fear or a fear of uncertainty, something that you're not sure is going to happen in the future. All right, we don't have anxiety about the past. We have anxiety about how it'll affect us in the future or near present. And that applies to everything from mathematics to what you're going to wear. So if you don't know the answer, it creates stress, especially if you need to give the answer to someone else, right? So the reason why I kind of prefacing my response to this is because I want people to understand that it is normal to feel anxious, but it is not necessarily helpful. So it behooves us, it is important for us to start extracting things that we can actually do to either alleviate or deal with the anxiety or stress. Now, stress and anxiety happens in two places, in the mind and in the body, always. And the body affects the mind and the mind affects the body. Simple example, and I think most people would say yes to this. Is a question I ask a lot of the people that I work with. Question: have you ever really needed to pee? Now, everyone will say yes. They might say it's a strange question, but everyone will say yes. But the interesting thing is that when you can't find a place to do so, it makes you uncomfortable, stressed, and possibly even anxious. But there's a point. Now, something as simple as a full bladder is changing the way that you feel. It's changing the way that you prioritize things, because it was never on your list for the day, but all of a sudden it becomes the top and most important thing to do. And it affects the way that we prioritize things. So that's actually really, really important, because you have to understand that your body has a part to play in the process. And dealing with the anxiety is more than just saying, I'm not going to think about this thing. Because if I say, don't think about the pink elephants, you will start seeing a pink elephant. And it increases in salience. But there are things that you can do to alleviate or reduce the anxiety. Now let's go through. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I'll spend about a minute and a half more. When we're anxious, we have increased heart rate. When we're anxious, we can also have tremors and trembling. Increased breathing rate is also usually a thing, but almost always there's increased heart rate and increased breathing rate. And those are things that you can actually control by slowing your breathing down. And you can do exercises online, just breathing exercises, very simple. You actually affect your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So you can actually make your heart rate slow down and tell your mind that you are calmer. So nothing has changed in the world, but you have changed, or you have gained control over yourself. And that's one of the important things, like the tenets for the way that I operate with the people that I work with, and so on. You only have power over yourself. And understanding that there are small things, for example, doing breathing exercises, and I'll come to some others later on in the conversation, that you can actually help to regulate the way that you feel. It doesn't solve everything, but it gives you more capacity to deal with the challenge that you're facing. So I'll stop there.
Okay, then. Thank you, Keston. I see Ms. Mora. Are you hearing me? I unmuted your microphone.
Yes, you hearing me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Because
if you have anything to add.
Well, I'm registered as an attendee, yeah? So I'm
Yes,
only
I
hearing
understand.
what no, but I came in when Keston was midway, so I'm not sure what you
Well,
all
we're talking about advice to give to persons to help relieve anxiety arising from COVID-19.
Okay, well, one of the things about anxiety is it's that it happens when things we are accustomed to doing become it gets to be a little different. It's not something we are accustomed to, so we get anxious. And I think Keston was talking about the increased heart rate and what have you. And what I do, and it works for many of them, is to give them exercises, breathing exercises that will help them, because with anxiety, you must know your triggers. A lot of people know their triggers, that when the heart rate starts, or their hands are sweating, and there are physical signs of anxiety that I try to get clients, students to be able to recognize. There are some people who know their bodies very, very well, so they know when something is different with how they feel. And I try to get them to recognize that and give them some breathing exercises. There are a lot of relaxation exercises, things that are used to balance the reasoning and the emotion, because our brain has two sides, logic and emotion. And when we are anxious, that emotional side is trying to take over from the rational, from the reasoning. So there are exercises that they can do. They can go online and get these exercises to help them to calm down a little bit.
Okay, well, staying with you, Ms. Mora, given the challenges of complying with social distancing, how can persons in communities help each other at this time?
That is difficult. I was thinking about that last night, actually. And the fact that social distancing means that we have to be distant from each other when we are accustomed, the linemen and the calling on a weekend and saying, let's do this. That is extremely difficult. This is something that we are really not accustomed to, and that we really will have to come to terms with. I know there's a hope that we went to May 15th.
Correct.
And many are hoping that, it ends there. But I think we have to prepare ourselves in case it doesn't. If we're keeping in touch with the news, we know that there are some countries that have opened things up, and the pandemic, it just started again. And it's either we want to be healthy and to clear ourselves of this, or we want to, as the businessmen are saying, reopen on a limited basis. But we have to, and I'm hoping that this time that we are in is helping to give us some kind of discipline, so that we will understand and know that for our health, for our guess the word I'm thinking now is longevity. We need to put things in place to secure ourselves, our families, our children, our grandparents. And if the health services, the Ministry of Health, those experts say after May 15th that we need to continue with the social distancing, that is something that we must understand. And if we are getting anxious about it, if they open it on a limited basis, that we follow the rules. We follow the rules.
May I
Okay,
just
then.
add something?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, please, Dr. Ball. I'd like to welcome Dr. Likwai to the session, although through the attendees, but welcome nevertheless.
Good morning.
Okay,
Go
so
ahead, please, Dr. Ball.
I just wanted to add to that. Understanding is very important. Also, in terms of being able to support each other in a community without when you have to do the physical distancing, and let's call it physical distancing because we can still be socially close, but there's physical distancing. There are ways to form support networks. So it might be you were a close community before and you get together online and you make some decisions that maybe there are vulnerable people in the community, elderly people, people who have pre-existing health conditions, and you might get together as a group online and make a decision. Okay, when one person goes out to do their own shopping for their household, they're also going to get groceries and necessaries for these vulnerable people. So within the constraints that have been laid down, as Anna Maria says very rightly, for our safety and our lives, there are ways that we can use the freedoms that we still have to be able to link as a community. Because what we have seen is people delivering for others. We have seen people taking other people maybe to the grocery so they don't have to go on public transport, which is not so safe at this time. You see people, community workers maybe being out in the community for one day with masks and distributing things, keeping people at a safe distance, bringing goods, keeping people at a safe distance to give them goods. So there are ways to do it.
Okay, to Dr. Likwai, you can add to this.
Okay,
Dr.
can I
Likwai?
say something while you're figuring
Yes,
this out?
go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I wanted to say this because first of all, I'm extroverted and I love hugging people and holding people, right? So this time is especially difficult for me. And there's something that I discuss with my friends sometimes, and I want everybody to give it a try now. What is the most comfortable place? Like you can think about it, the most enjoyable, most comfortable place for you, all right? And I'm 100% sure it is either soft and or warm, right? It's soft and warm. And the reason why I make mention of that is because that is something that almost all humans will seek. The bosom of your mother, the hug of your partner, the embrace of your children, or the embrace of your friends. And that this is an event, a social event, a social disease in a sense that has caused us to lose this. And that is going to cause considerable stress on people like me, or just stress in general. But I think one of the ways that we can deal with it in the circles that we have, let's say you live with your spouse or you live with your children, especially if you live with your children and you're not at risk, is to make sure that you hug them, make sure that you hold them. Because it mightn't seem like something important for you for that moment, but it's actually really important for us as humans. Because the first place that we came out of was soft and warm. So I think I make that analogy and it's flowery, but I think it's important for us to do that. And in situations that we can't, we use the next best thing. And that is to talk, tell our stories, tell our pain, tell our grief. because that is in itself is cathartic or therapeutic. I'm done.
Thank you. Let me see if I can get Dr. Likwai to join in. Are you hearing? He's unmuted, but I'm not hearing from him. So I'll just move on to Dr. Likwai. Okay, we seem to have some problems here with Dr. Likwai hearing me. So I'll turn to you again, Dr. Moore. In terms of the work environment, in your general opinion and from your experience, are the mental health concerns of employees posed by COVID-19 given enough prominence in the workplace, or are they left unattended?
That one is really a question for Dr. Likwai because this is his area of specialty. The difficulty is before we went into the shutdown and I started working from home, I did not have that much discussion with people about what was happening in their workplace. And I think at that stage, a number of workplaces were still, like the rest of the country, trying to come to terms with what was going on. And so had not necessarily fully realized what needed to happen in the workplace. So I think employers, like everybody else, they are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. They are people. They have responsibility for a workplace and responsibility for their employees, but they're still reacting exactly like the rest of us. And I think this is a time for epidemiological information and advice and for occupational safety and health advice to be brought to the forefront, because employers are going to need to be walked through how to restructure their workplaces and how to keep everybody safe. And depending on the kind of workplace it is, you may need a specialist to look at what is going on, look at the flow of work and the movement of people, and advise on specific procedures that need to be followed. So that's what I think needs to happen. How much it is happening, I really can't say. I only have individual information. I don't have general information. But I think a lot of employers and workplaces are in denial and are not doing what needs to be done.
May I say something here?
Yes, go ahead, please.
When this whole thing started, I thought, I gave serious thought to workaholics who lived at work, in inverted commas, live, because maybe home is not a happy place. And I spoke with some workers, some employees, and they all worked in the same place. And one told me they were given a choice whether they wanted to work from home or whether they wanted to come to work. And one of them told me, she said, listen, I want to come to work. Yes. I said, she said, yeah, I need to get out of home. So it was a choice the employers at this workplace gave their employees. And I'm not sure if, because I would maybe brand a workaholic who comes in early and leaves late. I think of all those whose employers maybe did not give them a choice and the place just locked down, closed down, and they have to be at home. Those couples who are in separate rooms and pass each other like ships in the night, as they say. And I think these people will, I mean, maybe they have grown accustomed to that kind of a relationship, so it's not a problem. But I know some employers gave their employees choices.
Yes.
They'd give choices.
Let me try once again with Dr. Likwai. Are you able to hear or to respond? It seems like we're still having those challenges there. Sticking with the workplace, how can employers reach out to staff who may be disconnected because of limited internet access at home? So they're hearing the news, they know what's going on, but when they reach home, in the home environment, they may not have that internet access. And they may be quietly experiencing some type of mental health challenges. I don't know if, Keston, if you'd like to address, start us off on that point.
Okay. So, well, the thing is, if you don't have internet access, then the best thing we have next is the phone, because we have stay-at-home measures, so you can't actually go see them. This is actually a big issue in the US also. So they have people who they don't have internet access, so they actually can't receive information either from their employer or from the government. So they actually didn't know that a lot of things were in place for the protection, like don't go out on this day or don't do this type of things, because the risk that's involved, and they were actually at higher risk for that. But anyways, I'm coming back to the point with the employers. Really and truly, the internet and the phones are the only ways that we have to communicate. Smoke signals, we can't see them from very far. Trinidad is flat for the most part, especially in Central and other places. So, like I said, internet, and if you don't have internet, then it's phones. And I think it behooves the management and companies to reach out. I think that's really important, because that's the only thing that's keeping us from descending into madness, and that is community, that's integrity, that's respect. And I think that that's something important for us to engage as employers. So I have my own staff that I work with, and that is something that I make sure to do, at least to reach out to them, see what's going on. If they need a mask, try to get a mask out to them if that's possible, those kinds of things.
I think I can welcome Dr. Likoi now on the panel. I've seen you there live.
Thank you. Some technical problems. Are you seeing me on the webcam?
Not seeing you yet. The poll is open, so I won't see you, but go ahead. We're hearing you fine.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to, well, morning, everyone.
Not by your laptop, because you'll get some feedback.
Yeah, yeah. Is that any better?
I'm still getting the feedback. Two things are close together.
Yeah. So is that any better?
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So the one thing I wanted to say, following what my fellow panelists mentioned, was that as Keston said, it's normal.
Yes.
Anxiety. And I think one of the things that people in Trinidad and Tobago and the members listening should focus on is listening to their bodies. Keston would know more about that than many of us, but sometimes the mind tries to override the body in terms of our intelligence and education and so on. And we really need to listen to our body in terms of stress. Wherever you stress, there's in your stomach or your skin, or sleeplessness, etc., etc. And that sometimes is a better cue than trying to rationalize, because as we all know, human beings, we have the capacity to be rational, but we are quite irrational when it comes to our behavior. So that's the first thing I'd say in terms of anxiety.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's turn to the family. Oh, sorry, Ms. Mora.
Hello. Yes.
Yes, I thought you were trying to say something.
No, I was just saying. I was thinking, because I did the whole thing about there are some people who really have learned their bodies, so they can tell when something is not right. And
Yes.
I've experienced that with people, that they really, and this is what we need to have people do, because people are so busy and they don't, listen to what's going on with them, and they're physical, and they need to start, because it's not only because of this pandemic, but it has to be a general thing, and somewhere it just hurts, or something, your toe, you pay attention, something is not right here, and deal with it. Don't ignore it.
Yes.
If
Turning
I could
to-
just
Yes, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to add one thing about what employers can do to reach out to workers who aren't online. I think something we need to remember is that there's an estimate that 40% of the world's population doesn't have internet access. So while for many of us it's part of life, it's not for many other people. And one thing that employers might want to consider at this point is what is a necessary service. We have discovered through this pandemic that being connected to the internet or to at least the phone is now a necessary of life. It's no longer an optional or a luxury. Employers might want to consider topping up employees' phones so that they can reach out to their employees. Providing internet access on a temporary basis, perhaps, so that they can reach out and their employees can stay connected. It might be something that employers would be willing to consider as an emergency arrangement for the next month or 2 months or 3 months, because being connected is now essential for your life.
Yes.
Can I add to that, Karen?
Yes, sure, go ahead.
Yeah,
Please.
it's I think for employers, EAPs are important. I can see them becoming a lot more important than they are now. I know some people have, including Eastern Credit Union, but the quality of the service needs to improve because we're going to get a lot more requests. Flex time, and as Karen said, I can see a situation where employers, just like they have given their employees phones and cell phones and paid for the bill, having to somehow connect some employees so that they can work at home. So that means Wi-Fi services, etc. Right? So these are options that employers may have to look at, because we know that the new normal is not going to be physically connected as it was before. Let's leave it at that.
Okay, turning to you again, Dr. Moore. What are some of the coping strategies you would suggest to use with children who are home and can't be as active as usual during the nationwide shutdown?
And that one is a hard one for children because they are built to move, they're supposed to move, their bodies learn through activity and play. And if you're in a home environment that doesn't have much access to outside, and maybe itself is not large, then you as a child are really going to feel very cramped and still crazy. And this is where families have to get very, very, very creative. Construct an obstacle course going through your house or your apartment or in one room. You become very imaginative. Okay, we're going to build a fort. All right, we're going to hang a sheet from somewhere and see if we can climb up and down. There are lots of exercise programs. For adults, those are work, but for children, those are fun. So you make use of exercise programs that you see on television. There's a Fit for Life program that comes on regularly or used to come on regularly. Get the children to participate in that. Participate with them and let them laugh at you huffing and puffing and not able to do all the things that they can do. You can find lots of things that will keep their bodies moving. And don't underestimate the small movements, the micro movements. So it doesn't always have to be, I need to be able to run 500 yards. It can be, I get to move my body in different ways. Explore yoga for children. Yoga uses a very small space. It's very challenging. And again, children tend to like it because there's balancing, there's twisting your body into different positions, there's all kinds of things. You can find physical activities that don't require a lot of space and take your children through those. For, I would say, if you can manage it for an hour a day, you might break it up into 20 minutes here and 20 minutes there. But do get them into that activity and also have lots of other activities for them to be doing, because they should not just be sitting down with technology and staring at a screen.
Correct. Any member of the panel would like to add to that?
Some of them who have online classes, and I think they do need what Karen has outlined there. They would need that. Because I
Yes.
have a young person, she is in her 20s and online classes, and she became very, she had to end up at Mount Hope because the online classes were moving so quickly, and she could not keep up. I guess in a classroom, the teachers are there, you are seeing the lecturers, and you can put up your hand and, you know, ask a question. Sometimes this, because they need to go through so many online classes, they just try and get it done. And she was starting to get lost.
Yes.
So we
I,
do need to manage that for the attendees.
I think that's a
Okay,
good
go ahead.
point, if I may, Chris. Every
Sure.
solution we do, every solution creates its own problem. And so what Anna is talking about, there are some of the consequences of more and more people migrating online in terms of, you know, life, education, school, work, etc. And it has its own dynamic. And so in terms of the visuals and so on, there's a lot of stuff on the internet that talks about the challenges of audiovisual and Zooming. Some people are suffering from Zoom fatigue. That's a new term. To go back to the question Karen responded to in terms of children, I want to add to this, apart from the physical, it is such an opportunity if you have children at home to get them engaged. They can do family history, apart from the normal education online and so on, and reading actual books and not online. So they have a lot of different activities that we can get children to do, both emotionally and mentally, so that, for example, it is an opportunity for them to become empathetic. If parents, caregivers can challenge them in this COVID-19 time to consider some of their emotional responses, as was said earlier, to others, caring for the sick, the old, the aged, the nana at home, whatever, help develop their qualities in terms of emotional connection to others.
Yeah.
I have a question. Go ahead, please.
Just want to add one thing. I think structure is also really, really important. And when I say, like, when your children were in school, when our children were in school, they had something at 8, 9, 10, 11. So I'm not saying to put everything in their day timetable from X to X, but I think there should be things that there's structure, things to look forward to. Even a chore adds structure, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. So I love the point of empathy. I think that's super important, because for some strange reason, that's not something that I think children we think that they'll just happen, but it doesn't just happen. It's actually something that we can pass on. It's part of what we should pass on to our children. And lastly, self-regulation. I think this is a very, very, very good time for parents to be able to observe their children, what frustrates them, what gets them angry, and be able to move them from the point of discomfort to dealing with discomfort, tantruming and running or hitting something. I think this interpersonal conflict is probably something that is a good time for them to help their children with.
Getting a little break up there, Keston. Let me turn to Ms. Mora. Thank you for the contribution. This is a question that actually came from a registrant who signed on, so I just rephrased it. How does one support friends and families who've had loved ones pass away for any reason during the lockdown period? Given the need for social distancing, you can't attend the funerals and the wakes and this sort of thing, but you are grieving. What advice do you give?
Yeah, that is something that is very devastating for people. And grief, I mean, the passing of a loved one is something that changes. It's very traumatic. It changes it changes things for us. That person is not going to be there anymore, and our reality changes. And again, there are the physical reaction to grief is very visible. Physical reaction to grief. People must be allowed to grieve, and what I guess what Karen spoke about with the connection, that people be connected by telephone and help each other with the grief, understanding that, yes, this is a change. This is a very, very serious change in our life as we move from here. Things are going to be very different for us as from when things will be very different. And everybody has to be, all the friends, maybe the 5 people who went to the funeral could keep in touch, those who could not have, and talk a little bit about how this whole issue is different from if there were no pandemic. They really do have to communicate with each other. There might be some who will be able to do the calming exercises and share it with the other persons who have been affected. They do have to really keep in touch with each other with this whole thing about grief and the whole mourning period. The research has it that it takes about maybe 2 years to get over, if it's a very close relative, get over the acceptance, because there is denial, there is anger. We go through phases of denial. Somebody might be, saying that they saw the person in a crowd or somebody, and these things happen. So it is that we have to be very empathic, and this is where empathy will come in, putting ourselves, and some of us might not be in the daughter of the person who died, might not be, but we will be able to, should be able to understand what that daughter is going through, or what that wife, because we were in close connection with them before all of this happened. So those are some of the things that we will need to do to keep in touch with each other, understand the stages of grief, because as I said, there are stages. There would be the denial, the depression, the anger, and all these things are going to be happening before we come to some kind of acceptance after a little while that this has happened, and it will be a little calmer, the acceptance, but the pain will be still there, and the lost feeling, the fact that this person is not in our environment anymore. Those are some of the things that will happen, but we have to be very open to whatever the anger and the denial, and help as much as we can with the empathy. Karen?
Yes, I was thinking those a couple points really important there about understanding what you yourself are going through, giving yourself permission to grieve, for the people around you to understand, and for the constant communication. That's so important. So I might not be able to physically see you, but I know that you're going to call me between 5 and 5:30 every day. And maybe you just call me to tell me something funny you saw on the road, but it's something that I can hold on to when I've lost something else that was very, very important to me. So the communication is key.
Go ahead. I have one question that came from the audience listening that I'd like to share. And the question asks about what about those involved in the healthcare sector? There isn't any stay at home and it's a highly stressed environment. What are some things they can do to cope and assist the family? That question came from Ms. Saunders Samuel.
Can I jump in here, Chris?
Yeah, sure.
We know from the research that has been happening over the last 2 to 3 months that healthcare workers, first responders, police, the whole public health sector including psychologists and therapists who are helping them and helping patients, that they are one of the groups, apart from the most vulnerable, the aged and so on, right, that are undergoing a lot of stress and trauma and also dying, as we can see. And we need to have something in place to work with them. In other words, who is going to take care of the caregivers? You understand? The TTAP, Trinidad and Tobago Association of Psychologists, has presented several years now for a trauma center in Trinidad and Tobago, probably about 15 years. Karen and Anna can
Quite
tell you
50,
exactly
but
when, since
close.
they worked on it together with some other colleagues.
Mhm.
And so this psychological impact, some people call it an experiment, global psychological experiment, is something that we are going to feel the effects of for quite a few years. And we need to wrap our head around it, and we need to focus on the first responders and the caregivers who are being traumatized but have to go to work, even though they may be at risk in dealing with people who are suffering from the pandemic.
So what kind of advice or tips would we give them to cope with those challenges?
Karen, Anna?
I wanted to jump in here and I want to reiterate, you cannot do this alone. This is where teamwork is extremely important.
Yeah.
In my line of work, if you're dealing with a situation with a child or adolescent that is complex and difficult, the most effective way to work is a multidisciplinary team. So you have a team of different professionals, some in mental health and some not in mental health, who are all attending to that child's, adolescent's, family's needs.
Yes.
And that team approach, especially with a difficult situation, because difficult situations are so stressful, the team approach helps to spread the weight, as it were, so that no one professional is feeling overburdened.
Yes.
The healthcare workers, first responders, they need to always be able to feel that they are part of a team. Yes, there's a team leader, but they've all got each other for support. And beyond that, there need to be teams of support for the first responders, as Dr. Leakway said.
Yes.
So mental health resources, supportive resources need to be poured into our first responders. They are taking the brunt of what is happening. And as Keith said, the impact of this is going to go on for a long time. In a disaster situation, which this is, it's never just the event. It's what happens, the after effects of the event. This event is still ongoing. It's going to be ongoing for a while. After it is quote unquote over, let's say we have an effective vaccine that is then reliably available worldwide, because that's the other point, there's still going to be after effects after that stage is reached. So lots and lots and lots of ongoing support, team support for first healthcare personnel, and there may also be need for like your kind of services, Keith, where they understand that maybe the organization has to function a little bit differently in order to maximize support.
So Chris, just a quick jump in. Wraparound services. Wraparound services is a term that is used, as Karen is describing, where you have a team to help folks, and that so that's a quick way of looking at it. Wraparound services, and in terms of the organization, yes, organizations have to think differently. They have to get psychologically smart. Unfortunately, as my colleagues and I know, mental health and psychology is not valued, unfortunately, and hopefully this will change it. Unfortunately, your psyche is like your software, and that drives the hardware, and so hopefully it will wake us up to looking at things differently.
Yeah. Anyone wants to add from the panel?
I just wanted
I'd
to
like to
add
add something.
quickly why. Thanks for that.
Well, I think Ms. Mora and then Kester. Yes, go
Yeah.
ahead.
When I look at first responders in their workplace, I'm not seeing they're always on the go. And I look at, what's happening in some of those hospitals and the step down facilities and what have you. And sometimes I hope that there is some room, a specific space that is dedicated to them, because some of them may be going all night, that there is a space that they can go and just chill, relax, have a cup of tea, or there are some things that they can even do, and just relax, close their eyes, maybe even massage their temple, just somewhere they could sit and just chill if they just want to stay for a little while. And then there needs to be some space that is dedicated to their mental health care.
Yes. Thank you, Anna. Yes, Kester?
Yeah, I wanted to add, so just in case, so while those things are being set up for these people, if there are probably a couple of things that you can do for yourself. I like to look at it in terms of credit and debit. So when you go to work and you give yourself to the nation, all those things are debits, right? No matter how wonderful it is, a debit from life and debit from your time. But there are things that you may know that are credits for you. And I think that you should communicate with your friends and your family what you need, obviously within the confines of what we have. When I say communicate with them, if you know that you need to have someone to offload all the things that happened, get somebody to offload all the things that happened, even if you can't get a therapist to talk to. But because we've always had that in Trinidad, that's a very, very common thing. It happens at the barber shops, it happens at the hair salons, it happens at the nail places. We have this place to release. And I think that's important for us to seek. I think also, and you'd be surprised at how useful this is. I'll just two more things. Find some music from the most enjoyable part of your life. Like, think about the most enjoyable part of your life and find a piece of music or some music that was playing at that time. Now that might seem kind of silly, but it actually helps bring the mind to something positive. And it does not necessarily solve all the problems, but it gives you a sense, it gives you positivity that you can actually store in your mind somewhere. And the last one, especially for the health workers, they've gone around and they've worn their feet ragged and their legs are in pain and they're tired. I think it's really important to take some time to do some stretches, because pain is something that makes us irritable, affects our ability to work and all these kinds of things. So there are things that you can do. I think someone mentioned yoga on the chat, and there are other kinds of stretches and things to help relieve the pain and the tension in the body, because that's going to affect the way that you think and process and even behave. So those would be some things that I'd say that we can practically do to ease things through.
Okay, thank you very much, panel. I have one additional question for you, which was posed a short while ago. And are there any challenges that may arise in terms of the family relationship when you confine to home for an extended period? That's a bit of a nice way. And how do you deal with those type of challenges? Dr. Likoy, I think I'll ask you to start off with that one.
Okay.
Go ahead.
There are so many challenges that can arise. You can go, it runs the whole range. So it's from the relatively minor end where children are not signing on to do their schoolwork and they don't have the structure they're accustomed to, and there's difficulty with getting everybody organized, and parents may be working from home, so they're trying to manage that, plus the children. The irritation of being all cooped up together, that's relatively mild, that is expected. And then you go all the way to the severe end, which is where there are people who are in homes that are not safe. So when you tell everybody shelter in place to stay safe, the place that they have to shelter is not safe at all. So just going to the milder end of it, and I'll be quick so that my colleagues can jump in and share. Recognize that there's going to be the irritation, recognize that it is something new to get used to. And just like anything else, if you are moving into a new workplace, you'd probably have a lot of meetings to begin with every day because you'd be changing things, adjusting things to get it running smoothly. That's what needs to happen. It's not something that's going to just happen without organization, discussion, and constant adjustment. So be prepared to do that, and it should not rest with one person alone, one parent alone, let us say, or one member of the household alone. Everybody has to contribute to this, expect to go through that.
Yeah, sure. Other members of the panel like to share their views?
Now, there are some families I know that, I mean, they're very cohesive. Everything that happens in the family, they share with their children. Some of them are going back to they're trying at least to have one meal a day together, maybe if not during the week, on weekends, so that they can, you know, touch base with their children. I know families who are doing that, and kudos to them. And engaging the children in understanding what is happening and some of the basic discipline that is needed. Everybody having to, I mean, if children were helping with the daily chores before this, they will continue. If they were not, and now everybody's at home and needs to pull their weight to ensure that the home continues in some measure of order, they will have to have what might be termed family meetings, sit down and let the children know, especially the older ones. I mean, from about, I guess, 7, it is said, 6, there are some who are very bright children and will understand when they see stay safe, stay inside, they see Dwayne Bravo and all these personalities talking about what we need to do. Some of them may have questions, and you need to engage them at that point immediately and help them to understand what we are going through. It's very, very different from what had been happening 2 months ago, 3 months ago. And we all have to be very aware and alert with how we treat with each other here, and what we can do to keep this home with some measure of order.
Yes.
I think the children do understand when you engage them in that kind of, and then but you have to keep, every time they do something that is that helps to create order in the home, you have to give them some kind of reward, not necessarily money or anything, but just a good job or thank you, sweetheart, and a hug. All these things are rewards for children.
Correct. We're running out of time, but I see 2 members of our audience have their hands up. So I'll unmute your mic, starting with Mahmoud Mohammed, and I'll ask please that you will be very brief with your question so that we may extend a little beyond the 11 o'clock time, but here goes. So Mahmoud, your mic is self-muted, so I can't unmute you. Let me try the second person. They're also self-muted, Patty Perez. I'm trying to unmute you all, but okay, so Mahmoud is live. So go ahead, Mr. Mohammed.
Good morning, Mr. Lewis, the Chief Executive Officer, members of the panel. Excellent presentation. I'd just like to mention a couple of things briefly about the whole issue of the mental health as its impact on us with this pandemic. For example, mention was made about the internet. which is very helpful and beneficial. But there's the other side with fake news. If we are saying that people must manage the internet as well and how we use it to minimize the impact of the fake information. I think that many of us are handling the pandemic in an excellent way. What we need to get institutions. How are they going to keep up with it to assist us? Because we have never seen the amount of prevention measures in terms of hygiene when we go to institutions now, that you're washing your hands now until it's peeled. So we would like the institutions to really come up to assist each one of us to to feel better and to add morale to the whole issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. We raises a very interesting question now about post-pandemic, in terms of after the COVID-19 virus is taken care of and maybe no longer in the air. What are some of the challenges that will continue post this period that we're going in? I don't think life is suddenly go back to how it used to be 3 months ago. What do members of the panel envisage?
He talked about institutions. Which
Yeah.
institutions that are you? What do you mean by the institutions?
Well, he's no longer on live,
Oh,
so
I guess
that's
schools and okay.
So I rephrase the question in terms of going forward. What do we see?
I think there's going to be a long period of adjustment to, as Keith said, the new normal. This period of shutdown and restriction of movement is something that's probably going to go on for a long time. Countries have to be realistic. If they open their borders too soon, then people can come in and bring back the COVID-19 infections, etc., etc., etc. So this is something that we're going to be sitting with for a long period of time. There's already been an increase in reporting of mental health difficulties, anxiety, depression, isolation, stress. That's something that's going to be happening going forward. And it's natural for people to want to return to quote unquote normal, because in an emergency situation, everybody wants to go back to how it was before. That's not what's going to happen. And I think there needs to be a lot of work on getting people to accept that there have to be some permanent changes. Because I think a lot of people are going to try to go back to how it was. A lot of people, a lot of institutions, and that's no longer going to work.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Moore. Dr. Likwai? No, I'm not hearing you. Let me see if you have. No, your mic is open, but I'm not hearing you. I'll switch to Keston in the meantime. Any final comments before we end?
Yeah, I think that there's trauma, there's economic trauma, and there's social trauma, mental trauma, and there's a period where we have to recover from that. So I think that some people are going to, out of fear, resistance to connecting with people. I think that's probably something that's going to come after, and it's going to affect the way that we treat each other. But with time, hopefully with time we can recover. But what I think is really, really brilliant about Trinidad and Tobago, and it's one of the reasons why I love my country so much, even though they say we're indisciplined, one of the things that we've done as a person just mentions that we've handled it quite well. Not everybody, obviously. But I think there's sufficient social memory for us to be able to deal with something like this in the future. Because it is inevitable that something like this will happen again, just because of the nature of infections and viruses. So I think that there is sufficient trauma to make us willing to respond appropriately in the future, and that's social memory. So that I've done there. Yeah.
Okay then. Thank you, Keston. Keith, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a time for critical thinking. We really need to stop and reflect and be introspective in terms of this event and its impact, as Karen said earlier, especially the long-term traumatic and social psychological impact it will have on the society. right? And we need to be, it's an opportunity to be reflective and to think critically, and sometimes not to import everything that we hear outside, which does not apply to us and is culturally irrelevant. So we really need to be smart going forward in terms of the impact that this has on us and how we are going to try and improve the society for the majority, for the better.
And Ms. Mora, I'll give you the last word.
Okay, I want people to understand that sound mental health means that you have basic control of your life's activities, which will be work, social, emotional, having some measure of control and being resilient when some of that control seems to be evading you at some point. We can't be sound all the time. There are things that will take us off track. But resilience and being able to bounce back is really very important. So the healthy friendships, the supportive friendships, the well-being, the talents that you use, and being in harmony with the values of honesty and friendships, all those universal values that life is founded on, to be able to help us to live in harmony with each other, ability to empathize, being flexible, all these things have the foundation in sound mental health. And anytime things are not going well, you have to attend to it and get help if you are unable to bounce back on your own.
Okay, on that note, I would like to sincerely thank the panelists, all, and members of our audience who took the time. I know everyone busy, have a lot of stuff to do, lots of challenges and issues to handle at the same time. So we really appreciate your taking the time out to listen to this webinar. We hope we were of some value to you, and we ask you to listen to our future webinars coming up shortly. On the 7th, we have question and answer time for our members, where you could basically ask the management anything related to the operations of Eastern Credit Union, or concerns you may have, and we will try to address them. There will be a session on the 12th, working remotely, ensuring productivity and the human connection. And on the 21st, we'll have a special webinar dealing with reaching millennials as a credit union. So that's our lineup for May. So again, thank you all. Thank you for sharing in the polls. Remember, you had the items to download during the webinar to give you additional information. And you'll be getting a survey at the end of the webinar, and I hope you will complete it as quickly once you receive it. So with that note, again, thank you all and have a good day.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for
You're welcome.
organizing this.
You're welcome.